Alright, we're back, Social Info Radio. Back with another week. Let's see what's going on today, yeah?
Before I throw the word in the bin, see, I'm holding the word here, and there's a bin here, and I've got the word here, British. So before we throw this word British in the bin, I'm just asking you to tell me what is British. And if you say nothing is British, and it has no values, then we can throw the word British in the bin. So I'm giving you a chance now, before we throw the word British in the bin, tell me what are British
values.
What
you're neglecting is you're saying British is nothing. I think British is everything.
That's very interesting. I've heard that one. British is everything. Whoa! I haven't heard that one before.
What do you mean?
Well, please.
We look at Britain, like I said.
Right.
This is a country that's been invaded. It's
right.
War.
Yes.
From Germany.
Okay. Yes.
There's a brilliant poet called Benjamin Zephaniah.
Yes.
There's a poem about talking about how Britain is like a recipe. We look at Britain. It's a boiling pot of culture.
Okay.
And it comes from across the world, across the globe.
Right.
And these cultures melt into Britain, and that is the cultural identity that I grew up in. It's affected by black people, it's affected by white people, it's affected by Irish people, it's affected by people across the world, and that forms my personal identity as a British citizen. That is my British cultural value.
Right. Okay. So Britishness is everything. So therefore, we won't throw it in the bin because it's everything. Do you agree that British is everything?
I understand his point. He's saying that it's
but do you agree with it, yes or no?
Well, I can't answer questions like that because it's designed to cut me off from being...
No, we're talking about unity here. Are you unified with this guy? Could you join his party?
I don't know anything about him. So he
told you British is everything. Do you agree? Do you agree with that?
It's not well defined.
What? He just told you. British is everything.
Come on, man.
What else is, what's missing?
Come on, man.
What's missing?
Semantics.
He just told you. British is everything. There's nothing missing. So do you agree with him? He said everything.
It's going to have to be a technical no, I think.
Obviously
right.
But, well, I mean, you can ask him. I mean, I'll ask you.
But are you in harmony? Are you unified on that ideology?
I don't understand it.
So explain to him what British means everything.
How our country is a mix of cultures from across the world, and that is formed the culture that I live in, and that is from many different cultures.
Right.
So that is all cultures because of how many different races and people live here in Britain. But it's
unique to Britain.
It's formed in Britain and in the British society.
Do you hear that?
So in the
in
the British political system.
Yes.
In the British economic system.
Nowhere else.
They are British.
The point is that there's a lot of countries that have this.
Yeah, that's what she's saying.
Yeah, do you understand?
Yeah, but they got that from Britain.
Yeah.
They got that from Britain.
No.
Well, he just told you.
No.
He formed it.
What do you think?
This is a culture that I've experienced, and
He's telling you.
I
understand what you're saying. You've made your position clear. But I'm just dealing with these people now. I'm trying to understand what their position is. I now know your position. You can relax now. I now know your position. I want to know what your positions are now.
Okay. In relation to
Britishness.
Well, like I said, with the adjective, I don't think it can have many things inherent to it. But if you use it as a... Because you can use the term British as an adjective to apply to people that originate from the island or are born in the island, and maybe certain things that, because of culture, they grow up with, that come to influence their mentality. Because you could look at the mentality... I've lived in a lot of different countries. I've lived in 25 different countries. And you can see the difference between people's interrelationships, the things they value, due to probably their historical history. Whatever happened to that country, it shapes the way people think, more or less. And so if you say that in Britain, maybe a majority have a certain predependence towards certain values or certain ideas, it might be the case.
What might be the case?
That, well, I just can't use British as an adjective for every person without knowing what they individually think. That's basically it. Because it's just a generalization.
Okay. So British is, where is the vessel where British values are stored or are preserved?
Within one's personal identity.
Within one's
Yeah,
personal identity.
Within the interactions we have with other people, within our friendship groups, within the miniature societies we operate.
Yeah, well, that makes sense because it makes sense because you already stated that Britishness is everything, so that covers. It's just I'm confused about what you're saying. I don't really understand your position. I understand his position. But I don't understand your position.
Sure. Okay. Well,
where are your grandparents from?
I'm still very confused.
Where are your grandparents?
I'll answer in a second. I'm still very confused about your whole viewpoint because you're doing really well to not expose your own views. It's great.
I told you
it's very tricky. It's very tricky to find out what you're saying because you're just like, but what if I unite? And I'm like, come on, man, I'm trying to tease it from you. But so that'd be nice to know. But like as for like I don't believe there's value in being a nationalist. I don't believe there's value in necessarily associating yourself with one race.
That's quite heavy what you just said.
Is it?
You just said I don't believe there's value in being a nationalist. That's what you just said.
Yeah. Well, what I actually mean is that you shouldn't. You shouldn't use it as an arbitrary bludgeon against other people. Because why?
Hold that. Arbitrary bludgeons is something else. But you said you do not believe there's values. You don't believe in national values.
No, that's not what I said.
Value in nationalism.
In identifying yourself as a nationalist, I don't see that it actually helps many things.
Good, okay.
Hang on a second.
So, am I correct in saying you don't believe in national values?
No.
Oh, is that?
It's a completely different thing.
I'm confused. Explain. No, let's. What do you understand national values to be, or nationalism?
I'm not sure that you can have national values because everybody has their own ideas. That's all, man. We're all individuals and we all think slightly differently, or very differently.
Okay.
So, hang on.
That's what I'm saying.
Are you
All right.
I see on your thing it says
All right.
the thing says Egypt. So I think your ancestry comes from Egypt. Are you an Egyptian?
I don't know that far back.
So, would you say you're British? What?
No, I'm not British.
Where do you?
I was born here, but I'm not
Where
British.
does your family?
My parents are from Jamaica, and from Jamaica via Africa.
So would you call yourself Jamaican?
No,
What would you call yourself?
black other.
So you don't hold a British passport?
I do have a British passport,
you're not
but I also got an Oyster card.
I'm Irish, I have a British passport with an Irish passport.
Yeah, but I have an Oyster card, doesn't mean I work for London Transport.
But so you want ethno states, right? So you want ethno states with their own culture and value. So then, what is culture and value in this country to you? If it's so important that these countries have culture and value, yet you disagree with me in the fact that I say that you believe that there is no value or culture in Britain. What is culture and value to you?
Did I say that I believe there's no cultural value in Britain?
Well, that seems to be like what you're getting at. What is your view?
I didn't say that.
I'd like to understand what is your view, because if we have a conversation, it's a bit one-sided.
Yeah, but I already told you from the beginning why I'm here.
I'm not sure
what I'm doing.
What is
but you didn't hear it. So what do I repeat? I'll repeat it again.
Can you answer my question? What is culture to you? What is your Jamaican culture? Your Jamaican heritage? What does that mean to you?
The question is, what is culture to me?
One way? Come on! Fuck!
What is culture to me? Right. Culture to me is the interaction between a people and their environment. The interaction between people and their environment creates culture. That is what culture is to me.
So doesn't it also include values? sets of values, belief systems.
So you
mentioned the word values, right? So
don't
we
get
move
me
from
Not again! Oh no!
to values. No, let's slow down. Let's slow down. Just stress it. So culture, as I said, I believe, is the interaction between people and their environment. The interaction between people and their environment produces culture. Then culture becomes valuable to those people and perhaps to other people. So value comes out of the need or the desire to preserve culture.
But if there's no true culture,
no true culture. Is that what you believe?
Well, no, if we're arguing that you can't define culture because
no, I've just defined it.
So much.
I've just defined it. You might not have a different, but I've given you my definition.
Your definition is that the environment determines culture, but the environment is always changing anyhow, so therefore culture changes. For instance,
correct.
In Britain in the 1950s and 40s, you could say that there was a sort of English culture, a British culture. However, that culture has changed drastically over the years right up to the present time, mainly because of the American culture which has been imported into Britain. And now we find our culture is almost 90%, if not more, American culture. So therefore the British culture hardly exists any longer. People talk about England, about the villages and the countryside being English. Yeah, sure enough. But the culture in people's mind, the way people think, determines on their environment. And their environment is controlled by the media and by circumstances. So therefore, if the media becomes controlled by American culture, which it has done, British culture will then follow suit. And that's what happens. Britain now is far more American than British. Whereas most of the other European countries are not so easily influenced by American culture. So if you go to Hungary or Romania or Bulgaria, you'll find folk music of those countries that are popularly appreciated by the ordinary people. That doesn't happen here. Almost all of our pop culture is American pop culture.
Okay. Do you see yourself as British?
No, I don't.
Yeah, but you said almost all of our.
Well,
when you use the word our.
Yeah, I do. I use the word.
But then you're saying, so you're talking on behalf of the British, and you don't see yourself as British.
No, I don't see myself.
So that's confusion then.
No, it's a way of speaking when you say our.
Yeah, let's slow it down.
Yeah, well, I only say our.
One specific thing.
Very serious. That's a massive point there.
Yeah, well,
massive.
When people say our army in Iraq, I don't say my army in Iraq.
We're talking about the country we live in. But let's actually address the point he made rather than one pronoun he used or whatever. Can we address that, please? Can we get your opinion on that?
So what do you think?
No, I'd like your opinion on it.
Disagree.
I like yours.
Honest, all right.
And why do you disagree?
Because he mentioned lots of words in there that the use of them, I don't agree.
Well, explain to us why. Give us go step by step.
Okay, so let's go into the concept of culture. So I think we agreed when we discussed whether culture is equal to people's interaction with their environment. So I think we agreed with that. But then he started to say, correct me if I'm wrong, that he doesn't know whether there's any British culture left anymore. So the point he seems to be making to me is that there's bits of British culture still left, but it's being destroyed by American culture. Is that correct? So, what is American culture? What is British culture?
I don't think the Americans have got any culture. Well, they have.
Very interesting.
It's pretty crass. But
really? They obviously do.
It's crass, but they do.
There's no history
The point is, when you talk about culture, you talk about music,
the constitution.
You talk about religion, you talk about all the aspects that make up culture.
Or the freedom to
Our culture here in Britain is no longer a Christian culture in the sense that there are many other countries that are far more Christian than Britain. Our culture is no more, there's not English music as it's now American music. Our food, for instance, is now very international. You might get fish and chips. You can get fish and chips.
Can I ask you a question when you're finished?
You'll have to look very far to find a good fish and chips now, because most of the restaurants are either Italian or Turkish or whatever. You know.
What is your culture?
I would say my culture is an internationalist culture.
I'd expect you to say that.
Yeah,
so I was going to ask you, the things you're saying, maybe it's accurate, but is this a good or a bad thing?
What's good or bad?
When you're saying like our culture's been supplanted by American culture?
I think it's a bad thing.
Why?
Because I think it destroys some of the most natural people's feeling of culture by being supplanted by the commercial profit-making culture from America.
But I don't think that's solely from America. You talked about how fish and chip shops are in decline. Most of that's from Thatcherism. That's the destruction of individual business and the market becoming monopolised.
But Thatcherism was the first stage of American domination. In fact, Thatcher and Reagan were the most aggressively American capitalist leaders in the world. And then they tried to transfer that over to Russia, etc., which was a disaster. But if you go, and as I have been, as a musician, I've travelled all over the world, but if you go to lots of countries, you'll find, even though there's American culture in some of those countries to some extent, the vast majority of those countries still have their own national culture, which I think is a good thing, because it expresses the feelings of the ordinary people within the country. We don't express our feelings through our culture any longer, because we have, for instance, rap music or whatever, which is the music of America, the gangs of America. Our pop music is the music imported from America. Our food is international, which is good. Our religion has more or less disappeared. Not that I'm an atheist anyhow, but the Christian religion, the churches are empty.
So, but why is it good if culture's coming over here, but then it's not good if it's coming from America?
Because American culture is the lowest of the low.
But so
what's your argument for that?
It's the lowest of the low. It's very simple. Because American culture is dominated entirely by an aggressive capitalist system. And because it's an American capitalist system, it will pander to the lowest common denominator.
But at the same time, American culture is also what gave us the Declaration of Independence. It's what gave us the Constitution. It's what gave us the amendments.
But you're arguing against capitalism there, but it's really the force that's given us the kind of society that we have and the incredible advances that we've achieved in the last 50 years. It's been capitalist philosophy. And I'm saying there are negatives to it, absolutely. The alternatives, they seem to be a lot worse.
Yeah.
We all live very privileged lives these days due to the advances of capital. No? Well, I was recently in the hospital there having my appendix removed, and the technologies that have been developed there weren't just developed by somebody sitting around going, well, I'll just do it for the hell of it.
Well, then you're aware of the fact that the National Health Service is going to be privatised. The American companies are already over here lining to take it up.
Absolutely.
Like I can assure you, you're young, I'm old. I'm not looking forward to my really old age because there's not going to be any National Health Service left.
So what I do agree with you is, like, if you have rampant capitalism that's not in any way regulated, it's going to be a disaster for people. Absolutely.
That's the nature of capitalism.
Well, you have to balance it.
That's why we've got socialism.
It is in certain places.
You can't control capitalism because capitalism is an anarchistic system which doesn't take into account any morality whatsoever. It's an amoral system.
So I agree with you there. Very good.
Well, how can it be?
That's very important.
Why is it why I'm a socialist? Because the idea of being a socialist is to regulate the free market and not let it.
But we do regulate it.
But we do regulate it. That's why we have a free health service.
Why are there corporation taxes?
No. Let's get this historically correct. In 1945, and I was just a small baby at the time, the government in Britain was elected, which was, many would say, a socialist government. It nationalised lots of the industries, it brought in the National Health Service, it brought in free education, etc., etc. Since that time, the capitalist class have done bit by bit, they've chipped it away. Because now everything is privatised, almost everything is privatised. The last two things left, which are to be the education and the health service, are the last two to be privatised. So therefore, you say capitalism is controlled. Who has controlled this outrage? What government has controlled the capitalist system in this country? When?
Conservative government.
There isn't government.
Conservative government has washed their hands.
Government's controlled.
And the Labour and the Blair type Labour, they've washed their hands.
I can't stand that.
No, because they've washed their hands of them.
I would like to ask, you're saying obviously about the things being privatised, but what is there, I'm going to ask you, is there an inherent wrong with having competition? Because to me it seems like, really?
Yes.
But competition brings excellence.
No, it doesn't.
No?
Competition brings utter disaster. Competition brings war. War is the outcome of capitalist
But competition also brings progress.
What about feudalism?
No political system is perfect.
What's
with
the
it.
well, you can explain to me what progress has happened under capital.
Well, for example, libertarian values that allow this man to stand here and speak his
These are just
progress of
Socialist governments.
things like democracy and freedom, libertarian values, absolutely meaningless words. Democracy.
How are they meaningless?
Because
We're standing here because of those values, bro.
No, you're using those
If I
words.
said this in Stalinist Russia, I'd be super dead, bro.
No, you're using those words in absolute terms, as people do. People say, we have democracy.
And you're talking about
we have
you're
freedom.
talking of
No, we do
capitalism in
not.
absolute.
We do not have democracy. We do not have freedom.
Well, maybe
we have relative.
maybe
we
technically.
have relative democracy and relative freedom.
In comparison to what, though? Is it an ideal or
Well, there
reality?
is no, because you're using the words in absolute terms.
Okay,
There
so-
is no ideal. There's no absolute democracy would mean that you and your factories and everywhere that you have control over your factories, have control over your life, have control over everything. That doesn't the case. Once every 5 years, you put a cross on a piece of paper, you say, oh, brilliant, we've got democracy.
I see what you mean, and it's the
No, I
same two parties.
I understand about
form.
democracy not being maybe the most ideal form, but in comparison to many other types of governments, they're just quite advanced.
All governments and all societies are economic. Economics is what determines politics and everything.
Absolutely.
Now, the economics in Britain is a capitalist economic country. In America it is, but it's a different type of capitalism. In Russia it is now a state capitalist country. In China it's a state capitalist. All these different capitalist forms are economic forms. And because they are different economic forms, they have different political setups. Because under state capitalist system, which say China is, you have to have more of a dictatorship in order to maintain the system and make the system efficient, which it is a very efficient capitalist system in China. Fantastic. 7% growth, absolutely. In Britain,
Not so good on the personal freedom.
exactly, that's the whole point.
Is it?
Under a state capitalist system, you can't allow personal freedoms because the system doesn't allow for that.
Okay.
Under a capitalist system like this country, where capitalism controls the government, not the other way around, you can allow as much freedom as you like because the freedom doesn't actually affect the capitalist system.
Tell me where you
can
the flaw
stand
with
here.
Tell me
you
where
can
you
stand here.
you'd feel more free, in North Korea or in South Korea?
I don't know.
Which society would you rather
Well, they're
live in?
both as bad as each other.
How could you say that though, man?
They're
One's
not.
got gulags, the other's got, I don't know, K-pop.
One of them would shoot you like if we're standing here speaking out like this, like straight up.
You say that, but you don't know because you've not been there, nor have I. But what I do know.
I'm from former Yugoslavia. Lots of people lost their lives for speaking up. Lost their jobs, lost their lives.
This is really interesting about Yugoslavia. How old are you?
I'm 27.
Yeah. Right, so you were not around when Tito was in power.
No, but my parents and my grandparents
Yeah.
were.
Now you ask them, were things better when Tito was around or now?
Oh, look, I'm not saying that they're not
Yes,
for it, but all the
because
people
you
that were against it, they're not around anymore.
No, because the people who were against it.
Of course, what happened to them?
These people that were against the Tito government,
they just
were
were silent.
Were
They were-
religious and nationalistic and fascist forces.
Right.
Tito kept them under control, but he couldn't eliminate them. As soon as Tito and the system changed in Yugoslavia, all the capitalists, Germany in particular, and Britain and America, went into Yugoslavia and broke it up and supported the nationalist revolutions. And now in Yugoslavia, doesn't, in Croatia, in Serbia, and all these other countries, you've got a far, far worse system than you had before.
Of course,
which was a state capitalist
if you had freedom of speech and a democracy from 1945 there wouldn't have
there's
been
no
all
such
these.
thing as freedom of speech. This is a complete
Why not?
myth.
Can you explain why?
If
What are
I
you performing right now?
I'd like
What are
to
you
know
doing?
why though.
let me explain about this plate. This little plot here is called
Speaker's Corner.
It belongs to the Queen. The whole park belongs to the Queen.
Yes.
There's an old tradition going right back to the 19th century that only this area here you can get up and say what you like. If you walk over that road there, and if I started and we were a crowd like this and I was talking, I can assure you within 5 or 10 minutes the police would be there and I would get arrested and possibly even you as well.
Under what charges?
Disturbance of the peace, obstruction
Well, maybe,
of footway, or
maybe
whatever.
that's legitimate. You don't want to block a footway.
Yeah, exactly.
We can talk here, no problem. But I don't see the deal.
Any other park either.
No, because
park is
if
better.
you go to and what you call dictatorship, say in China, and you did the same thing, you'd get arrested. And you know what you'd be charged for? Obstruction of the footway, disturbing the peace.
Yeah, but
Okay.
The same thing.
Yeah, but if we go
And
to
you say,
China,
oh,
we'd
that's
be, we'd
political.
So
be
we're
a lot harder.
equivalent to China?
Eh?
This is an equivalent society to China?
Not exactly the same, because I've explained that the economic system in China is different from here.
Sure.
So therefore, you can allow a certain amount of freedom to people that do not understand what freedom is, so therefore they don't exercise their freedom. There's a demonstration going on here today by women. That will be allowed because it's no danger to anyone. If there was a demonstration which was the establishment thought was a danger, and I've been on plenty, they would wade in there, the police would wade in and make arrests. And they would also put police agent provocateurs within the demonstration in order to cause trouble. I've seen that happen.
It's interesting you say that because the march here today is to celebrate 100 years since the suffragettes' march. 100 years ago, these women were being sent to prison, and they were striking against exactly the government right now. That's progression. That is what we get from being...
Not really.
Because they're not being arrested.
Because nothing's changed. But nothing's changed. They haven't affected. Nothing has changed. So what? So what? They got the vote, and then once every 5 years you put a cross on a piece of paper, and nothing changes. Nothing changes.
Well, look, it's a process, man. To be fair, you can't have.
How long do you have the process to go on?
Well,
it was 1918.
You can't sit down and design it on paper and then hope it works.
It was 1918 when the women got the vote, and as soon as they got the vote, what did? They voted Conservative.
So?
Because there were middle-class women that got the vote, not working-class women, I can assure you. In fact, no working-class men were given the vote either.
But you just said votes are meaningless, so why do you care?
Because they use this so-called freedom to convince you that you live under freedom when you don't.
I'm perfectly aware of that, but I do know the differences between certain countries, and the abilities we have to express ourselves here are quite advanced compared to some places. You must be able to acknowledge that.
Well, I don't know, because you
haven't been there, so you can't read books, you can't listen to other people that have been there. Come on, man.
I can assure you, I've expressed myself in public and other people, and we got arrested. I've been arrested.
You got arrested?
Yes.
For what charge?
Well, they make up some charge of resisting arrest, for instance. I was charged with instigating instigating an attack on a police station, leading 50 people, which was complete and utter rubbish.
Okay. I mean, like, I'm not totally opposed to you. That's the thing. I do understand you. The illusion of freedom, the democracy being a farce. I understand these things, but in comparison to many things in the world, it's not a bad system, man.
You don't know that, though, do you? I mean, I've recently...
I like to read books.
Well, you read books, but have you been to Hungary? Have you been to Romania, Bulgaria? Have you been to Russia?
I've been in Bosnia.
Have you been to... Well,
I have friends from Hungary.
Isn't the fact that liberal democracy, with all its faults, and we know that Churchill said democracy is the worst form of government.
Well, you're approaching...
Hang on. Apart from all the others that have been tried from time to time, he said that.
Of course
and of course it has its faults. And of course there's no universal democracy. We've had a few referendums, but very few. And referendums are not part of the British way of life. You might think perhaps of a referendum as being the closest that you get to some form of democracy. We know all the faults in democracy. If you're a strong conservative electorate, your vote means nothing. If you're a socialist, if you're in a strong Labour electorate, your vote actually has no value. If you're conservative. We realise all the faults with democracy, but the point surely is you're so absolutist, you're naive and absolutist, because surely with all its faults, there's some evidence for the fact that some form of capitalistic liberal democracy is emerging in China, let's say, it's emerging in Russia, it's emerging throughout the world. Surely the evidence is there that other forms of government have been found to fail. The communist system, I know it wasn't what you might call socialism, but the communist system in Russia absolutely failed. The people were starving. The situation in China, they tried some form of government control, Mao and so on. Hang on, let me finish.
I was in Libya.
Those kind of dictatorships simply didn't work. They weren't best for the people. Now, if I can make a further point, because you're so absolutist, how many people today do you see in rags, starving, not able to send their children to school because the children have no shoes? Those things existed in the 1930s. The fact that listen, let me make a point that you might like to listen to.
2 weeks after Gaddafi was
the fact that capitalism...
Yeah, I had a great time.
Listen,
it's crazy. Really
here is the gap between the rich and the poor. The fact that capitalism raises the number of rich people and the power of rich people and the proportion and so on, it drags up with it the poorer people. The gap widens. No, listen, it's true.
No, it's not true.
The gap widens. People say the gap between rich and poor has widened. Yes, it has. But as the gap widens, the poorer people in society, it's absolutely true, the poorer people today are miles better off, better fed, better clothed, in better health, better housed. They're not living in slums.
Let me finish.
He's made about 10 points.
Yes, but you made 20. You made 20 points to my 10. It is a fact that poorer, you don't see ragged urchins living in slums, walking around the streets with poor clothes, starving, dying of diseases, which were, I won't say common, but they were not uncommon in slums in Glasgow and London and other places when I was a boy and when you were a boy. So the poorer people, capitalism, yes, it has its faults. Yes, the gap widens. I say when the gap widens, yes, there's a bigger gap between rich and poor, but the people at the bottom, there's no doubt about it, are better off today.
Okay, can I just answer that? Because I work backwards from that. You're looking at things completely from a subjective point of view.
It's not subjective, it's based on reality.
It's evidence-based.
No, it's not. Let me explain.
You're absolutely
my
right.
point of view is
Are you arguing there's been no social progression in the last 100 years?
Well, there hasn't.
Yeah, man.
The whole point
I want to know what you think.
Can I just say this? When you talk about capitalism, I'm not just talking about the capitalist system here in Britain. If I thought that the whole world was fantastic and we all lived the same as we do in Britain, I would be fine. I'd be fine, happy about it. The reality is that capitalism is an international system which we are all part of and all responsible for. And capitalism in Britain and America in particular, those two, more than anywhere else, is responsible for the most horrendous conditions in the world. Far, far worse than ever before.
Yeah.
Far worse.
Yes, I agree.
There are millions, there are billions.
I
No, let me finish. You let him go. Let me finish. There are billions and billions of people in the world. The vast majority of them, literally 95% of the world, are living in abject poverty. And the reason why they're living in abject poverty is because we, and I include myself here, are part of a capitalist system which exploits those people to the maximum. Now, when you talk about how things are much better today, things are different today, but they're not better. When I was a kid, and grew up after the war, in the war as well, we were poor, but everyone was poor, and we were equal in our poverty, and as such, we were happy.
Oh man, that's a deadly argument we're going down,
Let
man.
me explain. At the time, there was a government which had rationing, so everyone had 2 ounces of butter a week, a half a pint of milk, the clothes were everything was rationed. Everyone, yes, I'm going to explain that.
You could buy rations.
Yes, of course you could. If you were rich, you could buy the things. But in general, most people were equal in their poverty. Now we have a situation where we have very, very rich people, and they're over there, billionaires by trillionaires, and you're talking about a middle class which is rapidly deteriorating. Back, a working class that's gone down. There are sections when you talk about people not being able to go to school because they can't afford it. There are, I can assure you, because I've been involved in education, I can assure you there are many, many more young people today in poverty, absolute poverty, than there were in the last 10 or 15 years. No, it's not a definition, it's a matter of fact. It's a matter of fact.
Smartphones nowadays.
You are. Yes, you are.
I think we all agree with the problems. There are problems.
Yeah,
All right, let's talk about solutions.
Yeah.
And look, I'm agreeing with you and with you. Statistically, poverty on a world stage is going down. It's getting better.
It's not true.
Yes, it is.
It's not true. That's propaganda.
All right, let's leave it in the middle then. Let's leave it in the middle then. Let's leave it in the middle.
But I like the solution.
That's very easy for you to say. Oh, it's propaganda. Oh, it's control.
There are all sorts of propaganda.
If we let's look at the explicit facts. Let's talk with relative terms.
Right, I'll leave that in the middle then. The problem I see, at least personally, is how do you solve that? And I do not see it being solved by massive government action, organizing millions of people that cannot agree on religion, on political systems, on all these different things, without it leading to war and deaths, millions and billions of people. So the best alternative we have, it's not even talking about economic systems, is free speech, which is a self-regulating mechanism.
There is no free. We're saying this here. We're in a, as I said before.
I'm not being shot right now.
No, because this is Speaker's Corner.
Of course.
If you go over the road there, and we had a gathering like.
But would it make a big difference to you if we could talk over there?
Yeah.
if we could,
how is it a big
I don't agree with the argument because we can go talk over there, you and me personally.
If all of the media, which is the controller of all speech and all information, comes out with the most appalling lies, particularly the last 10 years, appalling lies about Russia. However, those media are owned and controlled by very, very rich corporations.
Rothschild.
Okay, sure.
Yes,
Right, just like a point about Speaker's Corner.
Now, if I was in control of the media, and we all control the media would have a completely different agenda.
But man, you've heard of the alternative media with the internet now.
Yeah.
We have bloggers, we have people. Well, we're doing like this, recording it.
Yeah.
This is. I agree with you. Mass media has not got a good reputation for a good reason. Controlled by rich people, absolutely. Sounding more Scottish now. Anyway, but what we have now, the ability to do this, put it online, have a free marketplace of ideas.
But you can't say anything you want, though.
I agree.
Well, I know
because Tony Robinson got arrested because of that.
I'm a great believer.
I
agree with you 100%. I'm a great believer in the internet. In fact, all my information I get from the internet now.
Right.
Well, I have the BBC and RT and all the other things on, but I analyse everything and go on the internet and look for information. I know, for instance, when we talk about Ukraine, for instance, I know the media has lied and lied and lied again about the situation in Ukraine.
I agree.
They've
100%.
done it the same. They've done the same in Georgia, and they've done the same in Syria.
Just one side of the media.
All of the media, or the mainstream media,
and just on the mainstream and the Western side, they both lie, or just one side. I just have that clear.
No.
One side speaks the absolute truth. Is that what you're saying?
Neither tells the absolute
right, okay,
truth.
just have that
but
clear.
I go on the internet and I check. I've seen the I've seen
but
the.
that needs to be clear that the Russians lie, and I'm sure the Western media lies as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But when you
Russia Today.
I go to check out Russia Today, about everything that's said on Russia Today, I check and check and check and check again.
I agree. Do the same.
Therefore, and I do the same in Western media. Western media has absolutely no evidence, none whatsoever, to back up their claims.
Most of the time.
Russia does have evidence, but that evidence is what you would call propaganda.
No, now you're assuming that I would call it propaganda.
Hold on.
You're just saying the Russians speak the truth and the Western media always lies. I'm saying they're both going to lie for their own personal gain.
Absolutely.
All right,
what's
let's
your
do
point
this.
then?
The Russians speak the truth, the Western tell lies.
Let's do this.
That's not what I'm saying.
No, okay, let's do it
what I'm
this way.
saying.
Russia lies, West lies, they all lie.
Okay.
Therefore, I go on the internet and I look at the history of Ukraine.
Right.
Now, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union at the time of the revolution in 1917. It wasn't an independent country. It was an area. Ukraine means the borderlands.
There's a lot of irony to what you're saying because the internet's a capitalist invention.
No, but it's under control.
You can research this thanks to a capitalist invention.
But the capitalist invention, they've lost control of it.
No, they haven't. They have. He said it's a free market of ideas.
Yeah.
We're living in a golden age of arts and politics because every single person has their idea to get their ideas out. This will probably be published
the vast
later on
majority of people,
the
vast majority of people, including us all here, including myself, the vast majority of people are actually very lazy. And they're lazy when they're presented with an argument. It's easier to accept that argument and go on with making a cup of tea and watching EastEnders.
Okay.
So therefore they're lazy. Now, you may have to make a big effort, and I personally make a huge effort every day of my life to check and check and check. And I read history and I read politics and I read the.
Have you read the Gulag Archipelago?
I haven't read it all, no. And
You should.
No, yeah. I've read lots of books by Russians, but not that one. Life and Fate is the best.
Can I make one quick point?
Can I just say, if I'm checking something, I check the history of Ukraine. Ukraine wasn't a country. It had a revolution along with Russia. It was the main part of Russia. It was set up as part of the Soviet Union. In 1954, Khrushchev, in a drunken whim, decided, because he was Ukrainian himself, and that was quite not like Scott's been in the government here, he decided to give Crimea to Ukraine. Now, Crimea was always Russia. Always. We fought the Crimean War. We fought against Russia. Crimea was Russia. It was given to Ukraine by Khrushchev. When Ukraine became independent in 1991, they claimed that Crimea was their own. The reality is Crimea was an autonomous republic. It was within the Ukrainian
So where are we
system,
going with this?
and it had its own parliament. And it just, when the fascist coup occurred in Kiev, which is true, when the fascist coup occurred in Kiev, backed by the Americans, and all the evidence is there, no question about it, the Eastern Ukrainians and the Crimeans said, right, we're not going to have anything to do with that fascist government. We're going to have our own government. Donbass elected their own government, had a referendum, had their own. Crimea decided to have a referendum, the parliament decided to have a referendum, and they voted 97%, and 90-odd% voted to return back to the motherland of Russia.
Can we go back to the solution? Because you raised a very important. What is the solution? That's where the conversation gets hard.
Socialism.
Right, so you
Socialism
believe socialism is the solution to the problem?
Yes.
Can you please describe
I'd agree with
what you mean by what kind of socialism
Well,
you mean?
Che Guevara socialism.
I mean a socialism where the government, elected democratically by the people, has absolute power over everything within the country. Now that's very difficult because
Sounds more like a dictatorship.
it is a dictatorship of the proletariat.
But that's communism, isn't it? It's not socialism. What's the difference?
No, it's not. Communism, people don't know about. Communism is society with no money and no state. Communism is society has no police force, no army. Communism existed on this face of the earth for 1 million years under the word primitive communism. Communism, which we think is scientific communism, has never existed yet and never did exist yet, because when it was tried in Russia, it couldn't get any further than being a very backward country.
So this
socialism is a dictatorship of the people.
Right. So this democratic society, socialism, does everybody get one vote?
Yes.
Can I just
okay, and then from that one vote, they decide who's in power or what should be the policy.
Is there anybody in power?
No, not just the government. Not just the government, but the factories that they work and the place of work.
There's not many factories here anymore, man.
Right, okay,
and the press.
So that's true democracy.
That's true democracy.
Okay.
When everything, and I mean everything, is controlled in a democratic way by the people that take part in that thing. The workers in the factories, the workers in the National Health Service, the workers on the press, the workers in the television.
Do you agree with his solution?
No, you don't
That's communism with a currency.
No, let's stick with solutions.
Yes.
He gave a solution.
Yes, I
right, do you have a solution? Yes or no point. Do you have a solution?
Yes, I do.
Tell us what your solution is.
The solution is not socialism, which is a kind of idealistic system, which really...
No.
Yes, but
not. I don't want to talk about him. What is your solution?
The solution is a pragmatic evolution, building on what we've got, keeping the good parts. This is.
What have we got? What have we got? Building on what we've got. What have we got?
We've got an economic system that has its faults, but we have a political system which has its faults. But the solution is to build on the good parts of what we've got
Become an anarchist.
and change the bad parts. That is the system.
So who decides? Hold it. Who decides what are the good parts and what are the bad parts of what we have?
Let me tell you.
No. Let him say.
Let me tell you.
Is this his solution?
Let me tell you. It's not my solution.
I asked you for your solution.
Let me tell you, I'm giving you my solution.
Yes.
But what I'm telling you is the fact. We have what is called who decides? We have what is called a representative democracy. Not like him, where everybody decides everything. Which he's admitted it. People are lazy.
Yeah, he's already spoke. I want to hear what you've got to say. We know what he said.
The flaw in this argument.
I'm not asking for the flaw. I want to know what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that you build on the good things of what we've got. You change the bad things, and the people who decide. We have a representative democracy. Whereby with all its flaws, and it has a lot of flaws, and I could talk about all its flaws.
Yes.
But with all its flaws, every 5 years, it used to be less than 5 years, we vote our representative in Parliament, and we let them decide.
That's not democracy.
No, of course it isn't.
I heard him. Does anybody else have a solution?
That is how things work.
I heard you.
Does anybody else have a solution? Does anybody else? Yeah?
No, I say you know my solution.
No. Tell him the solution. Listen to his solution.
No, my solution.
You don't have a solution, my friend.
My solution is national socialism.
National socialism. Nazis.
Did you hear that? Right. Now, so explain to them what National Socialism is, a solution. Go on, explain to them.
Adolf Hitler.
Because he's a socialist, he's representative democracy, and you're National Socialist. So what's the solution?
So you'll be exterminated.
How does it work?
No, I wouldn't be.
No.
Whatever, let's hear it.
He'll tell you what National Socialism is. Listen.
What he thinks it is.
All right.
Doesn't exist.
No, but it's his solution. Then listen to his solution.
Yeah, why doesn't it exist anymore?
Just tell him.
Because it was a particular...
Just degenerating.
No, let him. All right, you believe in National Socialism. The National Socialist German Workers' Party of Deutschland.
Yeah.
Right. What was so good about that?
What was so good about them was their level of equality was based on leadership and obedience principle. Yeah, but it was an equality of the working class with the elite class.
About the SS, who was elected into the SS, and what qualifications they needed. There was no equality.
Qualifications were...
Attack them together, just let them speak.
Yeah, let's get the ideas.
Qualifications were based on basically Germanic tribalism, Germanic unity, Germanic values, which were based on leadership and obedience. They were there before the Christian era, and they were kept in their blood. This is why they were against Christianity, because Christianity was the rule of the priests. Their democracy, like we have now, is the rule of the parliament, of the parliamentarism, and the politicians basically lie through their faces at us. But their idea was of truthfulness, warrior morality. Because we have we have a moral system. The highest morality is the warrior morality, is where it's ruled by the warrior class. The warrior class will basically fight to protect the people with their lives. So
only the people
we don't have that system. The politicians, they sit on their asses and basically earn like 300 quid a day to basically just talk through their teeth at us. And we've got political correctness here. You know what political correctness is?
See South Park.
Yeah, self-censorship.
Right.
So once you're indoctrinated with a lie, then that lie becomes truth. And then you're ruled over by those lies.
I understand.
That's what Goebbels said, isn't it? Goebbels said, we have a lie, we make it a big lie, repeat it over and over and over again, and people will accept it as the truth.
That's what the Jews do. Because the
He said that. He wasn't talking about the Jews. He's talking about how he was the minister of propaganda. Goebbels was the minister of propaganda.
Why would you listen to a minister of propaganda if he said that?
Well, you're saying that's what we should be doing. We should be following the Ministry of Propaganda.
No.
Right, finish your idea. Finish your idea.
Propaganda just means to basically propagate an idea.
Yeah.
It can be truthful or it can be a lie.
Yeah.
But would you trust the BBC? Yeah, their truthfulness was based on...
Was it truthful? That propaganda by Google?
Yeah, it was. Their propaganda was truthful. The thing is...
What was truthful about... I'm already there. Truthful about that area, right? Where is the truth in that? You're not a white man.
Yeah, I've got Aryan blood. See, swastika.
There's a difference. Continue your solution description of what you want, so we don't get sidetracked.
Yeah. Why is National Socialism a solution to the problems we're
he's explaining.
Well, because of racial purity?
Oh, yeah, because the thing is it's hard to explain because we're really, really far away from the truth. Okay. And because I work myself back and kind of overcome all the barriers of the lies that we placed around us. Okay. Then it's kind of, for me, it's a difficult position to explain to people because this man knows, I can talk endlessly to him.
Well, sure, we'll try it. I like to think I'm rather open, so I'm not going to shout you down. Just tell me what you're saying.
When you're ruled over by political correctness, you're ruled over by thought control. But when thought control is based on a lie, then you can't have an equal society. Because those are above the lie.
Can I ask you a question? National Socialism, you said, told the truth and was a good system. How is it then that Germany, under the National Socialist system, invaded all the countries in Europe and killed 27 million Russians, for instance, 6 million Jews, several million of other countries?
This is the big lie.
No, I'm not talking about the Holocaust. I'm not talking about the Holocaust. No, the Holocaust is...
So you can't bring the
Holocaust was a minor thing, really.
It was a big lie, Holocaust.
It's the big lie,
Look, he's saying...
But it's not a lie. It's not a lie to say 27 million Russians died.
How many people did the communists kill?
They killed
66 million people.
No, they didn't.
Yes,
I can tell you. I can tell you as a fact how many they killed. I know, because I would have been one of them killed if I lived in Stalinist Russia, because I was Trotskyist. However,
You're Trotskyist.
I'm a Trotskyist, so therefore I would have been killed. He doesn't know what a Trotskyist is. Anyhow, I would have been killed. The point is that the KGB files, going right back to the very beginning of Stalinism, was released about 10 years ago, and the files, the Stalinists were very, very accurate in their records. They went to the concert, were shot by Stalin. 2.5 million communists were shot by Stalin. He then he expelled 400, almost 500,000 communists from the Communist Party, and he then caused the deaths of about 2 or 3 million within the gulags. So that's about 6 million. There were another 6. Yeah, listen.
The Bolshevik were Jews, my friend.
Yeah, they were Jews, yeah.
They were the murderer of the masses in Russia.
No, you're talking rubbish. Anyhow, there were people on the other side, your side, will also, you've got to add the Ukrainians. Yeah, we'll add the Ukrainians.
The Ukrainian Holodomor.
Yes, the Ukrainian Holocaust was 6 million Ukrainians and Russians died. So you're talking about a total of about, a maximum of about 12 million under Stalin.
Okay, so we're dealing with numbers, but where the fuck are we going with this?
Exactly.
Like
because
numbers.
What I'm saying, the reason why people are killed is because of the economic and political system that we live under.
Okay, right, cool.
Now, the economic and political system of capitalism has been responsible since the end of the Second World War for, I would estimate, probably about 20 to 30 million deaths in the world.
Why? How?
Because you're talking about Iraq, you're talking about Libya, you're talking about whole of South America. You're talking about 5 million in Indonesia. You're talking about millions of people under capitalism. And when you talk about capitalism and or so-called socialism under Stalin, which was not socialism at all. When you talk about these things, you have to see them from an economic point of view. What is the economic reasons why things happen? Because it's always, when you come down to it, an economic reason why things happen. Dictatorships are no different from democracies because there is another system of controlling the masses. Dictatorships, they say, if you get out of line, we'll shoot you.
We live in a dictatorship. There is no democracy.
Okay, I agree. Yes. Dictatorship and democracy.
He's a national socialist. So why aren't you together?
National socialism was the ultimate fascist ideology of the capitalist class. That's what fascism is. Fascism and national socialism was the ultimate political They were not against capitalism. No, well, you're talking rubbish. What about crooks? What about the armaments manufacturers? What about the chemical manufacturers? What about
Alright, we're going to move on.